All right. Good morning. Good morning. All right. I'd like to call the MPO Policy Committee meeting to order. As a reminder, as usual, this meeting is live streamed, so members, in order for online attendees to hear, make sure you unmute your microphone when speaking and identify yourself when making or sending a motion, so the secretary can capture who's making the motion. For those attending in person, please complete the sign-in sheet. It's on your way in the hallway. If you wish to make a public comment, excuse me, please fill out the public comment card and return it to a staff member. For those on Zoom, please keep your microphone muted unless you're called upon to speak. Excuse me. When appropriate on the agenda, we'll request comments from those online, and you can indicate your desire to speak via the chat box. And staff is monitoring the Zoom as usual and will recognize you when it's time to speak. With that, Erin, could you please call the roll?
Great. And I'll just ask if the appointed member isn't available, if you'd introduce yourself. So IDOT Secretary Biaggi.
Here.
CDOT.
Here.
CMAP Frank Beal.
Here.
Great. CMAP Brawley, President.
Here.
CTA. Cook County.
Tara Orban sitting in for Sis Killen.
Thank you. Council of Mayors. DuPage County.
Steve Travia for Chair Deb Conroy.
Thank you. FHWA.
John Paul Deepla for Jean Tulliver.
Thank you. FTA. Illinois State Toll Highway Authority.
Karen Robles for Executive Director Cassandra Rouse.
Thank you. Kane County.
Tom Rickard here for Chair Parag.
Kendall County.
Scott Gangler.
Thank you. Lake County.
Shane Schneider on behalf of Chair Hart.
McHenry County.
Scott Hennings for Chair Bueller.
Metra. Pace.
Lynette Civarella here for Jim Dewinski.
Sorry, thank you, Lynette. Pace.
Eric Lewan for Chairman Kwasniewski.
RTA.
Joe Leary for Leanne Redden.
Will County. And Class 1 Railroads.
Tom Evenson, Union Pacific.
Thank you.
All right. And we received a request from Eric Llewellyn from PACE and Scott Gangler to participate remotely in this meeting. These requests are made in compliance with the requirements of the Illinois Meetings Act. A majority vote of this body is required. Can I get a motion to allow virtual participation?
So moved. Brawley CMAP.
So move. Second.
Second, Robles Tollway.
All in favor?
Aye.
Opposed? Okay, let the record show that Eric Llewellyn and Scott Gangler are present and able to participate in the Policy Committee meeting. All right, item 2.0 is agenda changes and announcements, and there are no changes to the agenda. And we'll move on to approval of the minutes. Let's see, these are the minutes from October 8th, 2025. I will entertain a motion to approve the meeting minutes from October 8th, 2025. Can I get a motion?
So moved. Craig Turner.
Thank you. Second?
Second, Tom Rickard.
Thank you. All in favor, say aye. Opposed? The ayes have it. Motion carries. On to 4.0.
Great. Welcome. Happy New Year, everyone, to our first meeting of 2026. I hope you all had a wonderful and restful holiday season. I'd like to just thank everyone for making the time to be here. I know this is sort of diving into the new year, or the first week back from the holiday can be a little bit rough. I want to lead with how great it was to see many of you at our State of the Region event in November, a milestone gathering that brought together almost 1,000 people from across the region to celebrate not only CMAP's 20th anniversary, but launch the Century Plan, our new long-range vision for the region. You know, inspired by Daniel Burnham's call to make no little plans, this was a first of a kind event that we hosted. Usually we celebrate at the end, but we are excited about what we can do collaboratively for the future of our region and help us have our partners help us shape a bold vision for the next coming decades here in the region, with a target adoption of the plan in October of 2027. So over the next few weeks and into 2026, we really will be launching a more public public campaign. We'll be doing some work with our councils of governments across the region and elected officials, and also really holding a stakeholder series across the region on key issues that we're grappling with and that we think we need to get ahead of into as we prepare for a future that is successful here in Northeastern Illinois. So the events will be coupled with site visits and walking tours and demonstrations. So we will reach out to you, make sure you're aware of when they're happening, and would love to have your participation throughout the process. So stay tuned for that. Since we last met, also the legislature passed the Transit Governance and Funding Reform (NETA) Act, which Governor Pritzker signed into law last month. It formalizes a major milestone for transit. It was really great to see many of our legislative leaders participate there at the ceremony. We're excited for the future, but we know that that's sort of just the introduction of what needs to happen next. There's a whole lot of work between now and the summer, and I know many of you and your leaders locally will be participating in that process too as they look to get appointments seated and whatnot. So CMAP will continue to stand to be a resource to the work around transit, and look forward to collaborating regionally as we think about how that impacts our work here. I also wanted to note that we will undergo our federal recertification review at the end of January. It's a requirement that occurs every 4 years to ensure that we are meeting the metropolitan planning process requirements set forth in federal law. We will host our partners from FHWA and FTA for an on-site visit as we welcome the opportunity to walk through the strength of our regional collaboration and our work that we do here in the Northeastern Illinois region. There will also be an opportunity for the public to provide feedback regarding the transportation process. So comments will be accepted online January 13th through February 10th. Once the comment period begins, we will send out a short form. It will also be linked on our website. If you're unable to send feedback through the form, you're welcome to reach out to us, and we will make sure that we put you in touch with the proper parties to do so. I also wanted to touch on our work on safety. So leading the Safe Travel for All region-wide safety initiative continues in the new year. We're building on the implementation of our county safety action plans. In partnership with DuPage Division of Transportation, we've released a recorded webinar focused on funding traffic safety improvements, which is now available on our homepage. The website centers on DuPage County, but also provides some general funding information that would be helpful to communities across the region as they look to implement their safety action plans. It walks through federal, state, and local and regional funding sources and addresses key questions like project eligibility and what makes strong participation. So we can get that to all of you. But speaking of strong applications for funding for safety initiatives, I'm excited to just elevate the news that McHenry County was awarded a Safe Streets for All grant recently from USDOT of over $2 million to construct a roundabout at a high crash location. The Village of Evergreen Park was also awarded $200,000 to complete a pedestrian and cyclist safety demonstration project. So congratulations to McHenry for that. It's great to see that funding come to the region. So then just on to a quick agenda preview before we get into our meeting here. We're going to begin with some key governance and accountability items, including appointments to the Transportation Committee, approval of the 2026 roadway safety targets to reinforce our shared commitment and leadership and to advancing safe travel for all across the region. Several items also look ahead to the next phase of regional planning and investment with an introduction to our FY27 work plan and our draft FY27 unified work program, as well as the CMAP annual report this morning. Members will also hear update on the evolving policy and economic context shaping our work, including major state and federal legislative initiatives and a deeper look at the region's role in freight. So I wanted to just pause and flag for committee members that, I think many of you are aware that there's a proposed merger between Union Pacific and Norfolk Southern, which would create the first national transcontinental railroad. and has important implications for Northeastern Illinois. So the two railroads submitted a joint merger application to the STB last month on the 19th. But we want to make sure that we're paying close attention to potential impacts to the way our region works and freight comes through our region, and especially the intersection of our passenger rail and freight as well. So I know Tom is here. I'll pause and pitch it to Tom and see if there was anything you wanted to reflect for the committee.
Sure. Thank you very much, Executive Director Alman. So Tom Evenson from Union Pacific. As Aaron mentioned, back in July, Union Pacific and Norfolk Southern announced their intent to merge to create the nation's first transcontinental railroad coast to coast, uniting East and West. And last month, we submitted our nearly 7,000-page application to the Surface Transportation Board for review. This will kick off a regulatory process now with the STB that will last hopefully into early 2027, maybe sooner. But we're hopeful that we'll have a decision by early 2027, and there will be opportunity for public comment, for hearings, and for many analyses and debates over the merger. So I invite you, as a representative from UP, I invite you to reach out. Would love to set up individual briefings with you as it makes sense. For each of you individually to discuss the merger, the benefits that we see not only for the nation, but Illinois specifically in the Chicago terminal. We really feel that this is going to make the Chicago terminal more efficient, resilient for both freight and passenger rail. And so would again be happy to be a resource to all of you as we move through this process, and as you have questions, and would love to be a resource to you and meet with you as you'd like. So thanks very much for that opportunity. And I guess I just add, as a Class 1 representative to this committee, I'd be doing disservice to my competitors if I didn't mention that there's obviously opposition to this from our competitors, and you'll be hearing all about this over the next year. But again, I think we have a very strong case to make, and again, happy to talk to you all individually or afterwards. So thanks, Aaron.
Yeah, thanks, Tom. I'm sure this will be an ongoing conversation at the MPO and our board meetings as well. Just back to the agenda, we'll preview where the regional transportation plan is headed, from public engagement results to the financial risk assessment, and set the stage for decisions regarding trade-offs and the regional, as we think about sort of the regional capital projects that are priorities for us over the next 25-year horizon. And then lastly, just a dues reminder: annual dues letters were sent to counties, municipalities, and transportation partners. They're due this month. Just as a quick reminder, USDOT requires us to have a 20% non-federal match to the work that we do here. But if you do have questions, or your leadership would like to speak to me about that, I'm happy to make sure that they understand the dues process and the value that they get from participating in the regional process here. And then just finally, I wanted to share briefly that I was honored last month to receive the Motorola Solutions Foundation Excellence in Public Service Award from the Civic Federation. And I know many of you have said congratulations already or were there, and I really appreciate that. It was really nice way to end last year, but it's really not just me, it's the work of the agency and my team that allows us to really be successful in this role. So I just also want to thank my team for their hard work and dedication to the work here at CMAP, and you all for being just such great partners on tough regional issues. So thank you for that. Thank you. So that's it for me. Happy to answer any questions if there are any.
All right, moving on to item 5, items for approval. 5.01 is appointment of chair and vice chair of, oh, did I skip something?
Let's see, we have, for CMAP board update.
Oh, never mind. Turn the page too fast. 4.02, CMAP board update, Matt Brawley.
This better be riveting after that. The CMAP board met with the MPO jointly in October. At our November meeting, we authorized a revolving line of credit with BMO Bank and adopted a policy for using said line of credit. We updated the CMAP procurement policy, received an update on the Century Plan and the Comprehensive Climate Action Plan for Greater Chicago. We also received a report from its legislative affairs staff on the passing of Senate Bill 2111, the Comprehensive Funding and Reform Package, which you'll hear about more today. We didn't meet in December, and our January meeting is next week.
Are there any questions? All right, thank you for the report. And this is item 4.03. Council Mayor's Executive Committee report.
That's right.
Back to Aaron.
Mayor Schilke couldn't join us today, so I'm going to deliver the Council of Mayors report this morning. It includes representatives from each of the 11 regional council of mayors and Mayor Schilke. They met in September. The September meeting included a lively discussion of e-commerce trends and how they affect municipalities, paired with a presentation on the phase 1 of CMAP's freight assessment, which you'll hear a little bit of today. And the Council of Mayors meets next week to appoint members to 2 project selection committees and to the UWP committee. And this is really one of the ways that we get municipal perspectives into the regional conversation as well. So their next meeting will focus on data centers and municipal consideration of data centers, and promises to be another interesting agenda for the mayors. So I will turn it back to you.
All right, now it's item 5.0, items for approval. 5.01, appointment of chair and vice chair of the CMAP Transportation Committee. Aaron?
Great. I muted myself. I'll kick us off here. The next item on the agenda is a request to appoint Tara Orban from Cook County Department of Transportation and Highways as chair of the Transportation Committee, as we do annually. Tara is currently the vice chair of the Transportation Committee. The committee is also asked to approve the appointment of Scott Hennings from McHenry County Division of Transportation as the vice chair of the Transportation Committee.
And before we move on to the important procedural transaction, I just want to take a moment to thank Kevin Carrier for his leadership and service as the chair of the Transportation Committee. Kevin stepped in when the chair position was vacated early. That's always appreciated, which means he served for more than 2 years. And it proved especially consequential for this committee. So thank you, Kevin. Please thank Kevin for the leadership. And he was always prepared, engaged, and deeply committed. So moving on from there, we'd like to entertain a motion to appoint Tara Orban as chair and Scott Hennings as vice chair of the CMAP Transportation Committee.
Moved, Travia.
All right,
Second, Lake.
look at that. I have a motion and I have a second. All in favor, say aye.
Aye.
All right, any opposed? All right, motion carries. Thank you for your service. Okay. On to 5.02, the draft FY 2027 Unified Work Program, which will be delivered by Camo Dobbs.
All right. Good morning, everyone. Happy New Year. This morning, I will review the draft FY 2027 Unified Work Program that we call the UWP that was included in your meeting materials. As a reminder, the UWP documents the transportation planning activities that are required of CMAP as an MPO, including a description of the planning work to be completed, who is executing that planning work, and a time frame for the completion of the work. The UWP also provides an activity level budget for the federal metropolitan planning funding that supports our activities. The work outlined in the UWP is completed by CMAP staff and our regional partners through 2 programs. The first is the core program, which is developed annually and generally includes the ongoing planning tasks that are required to fulfill our federal requirements. The second is the competitive program, which is a 5-year program that we develop every other year to fund one-time planning studies or projects that will complement our UWP required work. So on the next slide, for fiscal year 27, these 2 programs combined total just under $35 million, allocated to CMAP and our partner agencies as shown here and as described in much more detail in the draft document. As noted here and throughout the document, the total funding to be allocated to CMAP for personnel and expenses is $28.3 million. However, the splits between personnel and expenses, as well as allocations to specific activity categories, are preliminary. These totals will be finalized with CMAP board approval of the agency's comprehensive budget, which is anticipated in February. The remainder of the funding, about $6.6 million, is proposed to be allocated to our partner agencies as shown here. These external allocations are about 5.6% higher than last year's, and the allocation for CMAP is about 2.8% higher. On the next slide, the draft core program budget by activity is shown. This budget was developed from proposals received from 15 external agencies, as well as by holding CMAP's activity level allocations similar to last year's allocations. As is typical for our region, the majority of our transportation planning funds are allocated for developing and implementing our long-range metropolitan transportation plan, as well as our transportation improvement program, or TIP, as well as ensuring that the public participates in all of the work that we do. On the next slide, we're finally rounding out the draft FY27 UWP competitive program. Shown here is the full 5-year program The FY27 column with the bold border on it represents the portion of this program that's included in the FY27 budget. For FY27, we received 3 eligible applications requesting approximately $1 million in funding across fiscal years 27, 28, and 29. In addition to those projects awarded funding in this year's competitive program, there was $241,500,000 allocated for METRA in FY27 in our previous 5-year program. More detailed information about each of the projects is included in the draft of the UWP in your packet. And on the next slide, just thank you. That summarizes the draft UWP for your consideration today. As I noted earlier, CMET board approval of the comprehensive budget, which includes these federal metropolitan planning funds as well as other funds that come to the agency, is anticipated in February. Once that budget is approved, the draft UWP will be updated to reflect the final personnel and expense allocations, and those updates will be presented here for final approval at your March meeting prior to transmittal to IDOT and USDOT. So that was a quick summary. The details again are in your packet, but I'm happy to take any questions.
Any questions? All right, thank you so much. Very thorough. I would like to entertain a motion to approve the draft fiscal year 2027 Unified Work Program. Can I get a motion?
So moved. McHenry County.
Thank you. A second?
Kane County seconds.
Thank you. All in favor, say aye.
Aye.
Opposed? All right, motion carries. Thank you
Thank you
so
very much.
Okay. Item 5.03, 2026 roadway safety targets. Victoria Barrett is our program lead.
Good morning and Happy New Year, everyone. My name is Vicki Barrett. I am the program lead for CMAP Safe Systems program, and I'm here to present the 2026 roadway safety targets for your approval. Today's targets represent the hopeful goals for the roadway safety in 2026. This January meeting is well timed in that we're able to get a look back at the preliminary numbers for 2025. These numbers are likely to change over time, but it appears as though 20 fewer people died on Illinois roadways in 2025 than in 2024, and there were 31 fewer crashes. Again, these numbers are likely to change. Declines, of course, are welcome, but I think I speak for all of us when I say those are not good enough. Those changes that we want to make will require broad sweeping change, which is why you are hearing so much about the safe system approach to traffic safety. We will continue to update you on our safe systems work as we move forward. But today I am here to present the 2026 roadway safety targets for your approval. And I wanted to give you a quick overview of the safety target program before I show you the 2026 targets. The FHWA's Transportation Performance Management Program, known as the TPM program, is a required reporting program that asks states to report on a number of assets and conditions, such as bridge condition and pavement condition and traffic safety. The goal of the TPM program is to inform investment decisions, needed work, and help deliver progress in the form of funding, assistance, and other resources. MPOs are required to set targets with the passage of MAP 21, which went into effect in 2018. This MPO Policy Committee is the responsible party for approving the targets per federal rule, and these safety targets are the primary indicators for the Highway Safety Improvement Program. These are annual targets, as you will see, and we receive them from IDOT typically at the end of the summer. I'll go a little bit more into the process by which they are approved. On the next slide, please. In September, we generally receive the targets for the following year from IDOT. Staff conducts an internal review of these targets and develops a recommendation. We present these targets to the Transportation Committee for recommendation to this committee in November, and next week we will bring them to the board for concurrence. So now the 2026 Illinois roadway safety targets are all shown on the following slide. There are 5 federal performance metrics related to traffic safety. This table shows all 5 of the 2026 roadway safety targets for the state. I'll go into each of these in a little detail. They are also in your packet. I'd like to point out that the base years on this table, which are averaged as the first step in the target setting process, are end at 2022 because 2023 and 2024 data was not available at the time these targets were identified. So the base years used to establish the 2026 targets are 2018 to 2022. These targets are set in one of two ways, depending on the current trend for each performance measure. For increasing trends, IDOT uses a 2% policy-based reduction from the rolling 5-year average to indicate the agency's commitment to reversing the trend. For decreasing trends, IDOT uses a least squares trendline method to indicate a hopeful and likely continuation of the current trend. IDOT always chooses the method that represents the most aggressive target. On the next slide, you'll see two charts that both refer to statewide traffic fatalities. The top chart shows the number of fatalities, and the bottom chart is the number of fatalities per 100 million miles of vehicular travel. These are state numbers. The regional trends are very similar. Traffic fatalities trended upward from 2018 to 2021, and although they have slowly been declining, we are still above pre-pandemic levels. On the top, the number of fatalities is on the y-axis vertically. The years are across the bottom, moving from 2018 to 2026. The 5-year average line continues to trend upward for both fatalities and rate of fatalities, despite the recent declines. Therefore, the 2026 fatality targets were determined using a 2% policy-based reduction from the 5-year average. The target for fatalities in 2026 is 1,077.5. The lower chart shows the rate of fatalities per travel, and that was set using the same 2% policy-based reduction, which is 1.061 for 2026. The next slide shows the two charts related to serious injuries at the state level. Again, the number of serious injuries is on the top, and the rate of serious injuries per amount of travel is on the bottom. Serious injuries have been declining. This must always be considered in concert with the increase in fatalities, but they are declining. So a different method was used to identify this target, which is a trend line method, least squares trend line method. The target for the number of serious injuries in 2026 is 7,215.5. The number for serious injuries per 100 million miles of vehicle travel is 7.595. This is the last chart, which shows the number of non-motorized fatalities and serious injuries. This is meant to capture safety performance for people who are walking, bicycling, and using other non-motorized modes. The federal performance measure combines multiple trends, but there are individual trends within this combined trend. As a result, IDOT uses a composite method to identify the non-motorized fatalities and serious injuries method, and has set a target of 1,289.3 for 2026. Today, staff recommends approval of the state's 2026 roadway safety targets. Both IDOT and CMAP believe these targets reflect a commitment to improving traffic safety, which is aggressive and within reach. By agreeing to support IDOT safety targets, CMAP is not agreeing to a specific share in the decrease in fatalities, rather agreeing to integrate the targets as goals in the metropolitan planning process and to plan and program projects that help meet the state's targets. Finally, on the next slide, next steps related to safety and safety targets. As Aaron mentioned earlier in the meeting, the earlier adoption of the Safe Travel for All safety action plans this year have positioned us with a wealth of knowledge and alignment on safety solutions for the region. We are in the process of assembling and developing those. We've had discussions here about moving towards improved performance metrics that will help us all understand our priorities and needed actions at the regional level. This work will be done in collaboration with our partners, many of whom are sitting at this table, to identify goals that are transparent, create urgency, and inspire shared action. With that, staff requests a motion to approve the 2026 roadway safety targets, and I'm happy to take questions or receive comments.
Any questions or comments? Thank you so much for the report. All right. Hearing none, I'd like to entertain a motion to approve the proposed 2026 roadway safety targets. Can I get a motion?
So moved, Karen Robles Tolway.
Thank you. Second?
And Travia, DuPage County.
Thank you, Steve. All in favor? Aye.
Aye.
Any- All right. Motion carries. Thank you so much for the work and the report. Okay, on to item 5.04, which is on to 2050, and the tip conformity analysis and tip amendment. And Russell Petrowiak is program lead.
Okay,
Petrowiak.
included in your packet today is the ONTO 2050, 2023 to 2028 tip conformity amendment 26-03. The CMAP region is an attainment area for ozone. Thus, we are required under the Clean Air Act to demonstrate that projects in the TIP conform to the motor vehicle emissions budget for our area through a regional emissions analysis. As shown in the memo, two new non-exempt projects, along with changes to 8 previously conformed projects that required reanalysis, were included in the emissions analysis for this amendment. Projects in the TIP subject to air quality analysis requirements must demonstrate, when modeled, that the region does not exceed our motor vehicle emissions budget, and as shown at the end of the memo in your packet, the region does not exceed the motor vehicle emissions budget for VOCs and for nitrogen oxides as required. The conformity amendment was released for a 30-day public comment period that ended on December 18th, during which no comments were received. The conformity amendment, CMAP's emissions modeling process, and fulfilling of regulatory requirements were discussed and reaffirmed at the Tier 2 interagency consultation meeting on December 6th. CMAP staff requests approval of the ONTO 2050, 2023 to 2028 TIP conformity analysis and TIP amendment 26-03. And after the motion has been made, I can answer any questions that the committee may have.
All right, thank you for that report and the work behind it. Are there any questions? All right, hearing none, can I get a motion to approve? Oh, I need to formally say, I will entertain a motion to approve the the ONTO 2050, 2023 through 2028 TIP conformity analysis and TIP amendment 2603. There, it's official. Can I get a motion to approve?
Beal, CMAP.
Thank you. Second?
Second, CDOT.
Thank you. All in favor, say aye.
Aye.
Opposed? All right. Thank you so much. Motion carries. Item 5.05, next up, our transit data sharing agreement, and I will hand that over to Erin Alleman.
There we go. This agreement's part of the Federal Transportation Performance Management Framework, which supports financial planning, programming, and target setting for the performance measures for MPOs, DOTs, and our transit agencies. The update codifies changes that are already in practice, such as timeliness and responsibilities in response to the federal rules. The agreement that you have before you was co-developed with each of the signing agencies and was recommended for approval by the Transportation Committee at their last meeting. So with that, I'm happy to answer any questions, but we are seeking approval of this today.
Are there any questions about the transit data sharing agreement? All right, thank you. So I will entertain a motion to approve the transit data sharing agreement. Can I get a motion?
Metro Lennox.
Thank you. Second? Fantastic. All in favor, say aye. Opposed? All right, motion carries. Thank you, Erin. All right, item 6.0, information item 6.01, the 2025 CMAP annual report. Director Alleman.
Great. We are proud to present you with this year's 2025, last year's 2025 annual report, Solving for Tomorrow Today, which highlights our achievements from the past year. And it was a busy year, but I think we're probably on track for another busy year this year. For the last 2 decades, we've worked with our partners across jurisdictions to solve complex challenges and deliver results for the people of Northeastern Illinois in partnership with you all. So in this report, we showcase our history and significant milestones we achieved together. Next So maybe not next slide. Things that you'll see highlighted in the report are the Illinois Regional Planning Act. Oh, nope. This is what happens when I riff on my talking points. The Illinois Regional Planning Act requires us to do this annual report, and we have to share it with the General Assembly every year. You'll get physical copies. We had a little bit of a delay with our printer this year, but you'll be sure to get those, and we'll have them for the board as well. Next slide. So again, I mentioned we had our first of a kind State of the Region event in November to celebrate our 20th anniversary and kick off the Century Plan. The annual report spotlights 20 years of excellence at CMAP from our creation in 2007 and the completion of 2 comprehensive plans and other significant achievements. With you and the CMAP board and our many other partners, we continue to solve for tomorrow today. And again, that's the theme of this report. The Century Plan will be a long-term overreaching vision for the 7-county region that will guide policies for transportation, the environment, our economy. For decades into the future, it will really serve as our North Star and really define what we must do together, why it matters, while providing policy guidance on how we get there. We'll need it to build consensus and to secure bold commitments on a path for the next 20 to 30 years. And I mentioned earlier, we will continue this engagement around the Century Plan into next year because it's not just our plan, it is truly the region's plan for a better, stronger Northeastern Illinois. Next slide. I've hit a lot of these points already, but landmark transit legislation here. We were really excited that this region and this state is making a bold commitment beyond what we're seeing across the rest of the country, is that we're not just filling the gap, but we are setting a bold course for transit to be better and really putting that stake in the ground here. So you'll see highlights of our role as a technical lead and convener, supplying research and financial modeling and scenario analysis to our partners who worked on this. So just a few highlights. I'm sure you'll take it home with you when we send you your copies and share it with your children, because I think they're the most important people to inspire to make change for the future. So again, thanks. I hope you see the work that we collaborated on and that you participated on and reflected in this year's annual report. So that's it for item 6.01.
Any questions?
Questions on the annual report?
Read it. It's good stuff. And everyone contributed. So, all right. Thank you, Director. And next, item 6.02, which is the introduction of CMAP's proposed fiscal year 2027 work plan.
Right. So me again. So you saw the UWP program. Thank you for the approval of that. But the comprehensive work plan here really does detail what guides our work. For many years, we've relied on a single large-scale comprehensive plan to do that. 2050 included everything: the region's vision, our regional transportation plan, our policies for housing and water. And, I think that has served our region well. But this year we have shifted to a multi-plan framework. So we're collaborating with regional leaders to prepare this new vision for Northeastern Illinois and what we need to focus on that will help us achieve those goals together. The vision will guide planning activities over the next 8 to 10 years, with future initiatives and strategic plans tailored to issues in transportation, climate, regional economy, all things that I think you're well aware that we focus on here. So there won't be anything new per se, but I do think one of the things we're trying to do is tailor this approach to make sure that this vision can help guide a series of complementary plans that revolve around it. In addition to these regional plans, our work is guided by a 5-year strategic direction and then the annual budget and work plan. We have a portfolio of over 30 strategic programs to strategically and effectively plan and manage our work. The program areas often include several multi-year projects embedded within each of them that advance the region's long-term goals. The program areas help us maintain consistency in our work from year to year, and CMAP's work is always ongoing and can extend over many years. So we also have program areas for our agency-wide services, such as communications, engagement, finance, and human resources. And as we've done for the last several years, our FY27 work plan describes each program area and lists a few of the key activities that will happen in each of those program areas. And the fiscal year that this is dedicated to is July 1 through June 30th of 2027. So let's see, continuing the work, some of the examples of the work that you'll see in our FY27 program will be to continue to strengthen communities and build capacity for local governments through our annual call for projects to deliver technical assistance, data-driven decision-making to help support plans for transportation and other capital investments across the region, our work that's focused on safety and our Safe and Completes program. Again, we will continue to help support communities to develop local road safety plans, bicycle and pedestrian plans, and implementation assistance across the region. We also are hoping to continue to help support a collaborative programming approach to the Illinois Highway Safety Improvement Program and develop regional policies and programs that increase and promote safety. We're also going to continue our work around economic competitiveness, including a regional economic framework and strategy with shared visions and goals for the future. Continuing our work and support for the Greater Chicagoland Economic Partnership, which is a collaboration between all of the counties and World Business Chicago, to make sure that we are thinking about how we attract local investment, strengthen developer connections, address local land use issues and economic development and capacity issues. And then closely related to this program, we're also focusing on coordinated land use strategies to increase the number and quality of housing choice across the region. We've got a few projects going on with our county partners in both Lake and Kane, and I believe McHenry also, which is really, I think, something that we need to be focused on as a region. It's a hot topic across the country, but we're really trying to help figure out how we can help our communities think through the importance of making sure that we have strong housing choices for all across the region. And then we'll focus on the completion and adoption of the 2026 Regional Transportation Plan in FY27, and that will include the identification, evaluation, and prioritization of regional capital projects. Climate work as well is top of mind as we wrap up our climate action plan for the region, but that was a much broader look across our region, which included Wisconsin and Indiana. So we'll be coming back and tailoring some of those solutions directly for the region and thinking about how we can utilize things like our greenhouse gas emissions reduction strategies to think about the impacts on our region's air quality. And then finally, continue to support the implementation of the Northern Illinois Transit Authority Act and the Corridor Development Office Management for 290 and the Blue Line Corridor. So just a few highlights. That concludes my overview of the FY27 work plan. Any questions?
All right. Thank you. We look forward to seeing that roll out. Next item is the 6.03. Yes.
Yes.
The Regional Transportation Plan update. Ryan Tompto will be presenting.
Good morning.
Morning.
So again, yeah, my name is Ryan Tomto. I'm a principal policy analyst here at CMAP. I use he, him pronouns. And the focus of my presentation today is to provide an update on the Regional Transportation Plan, but specifically where we've landed with our fiscal constraint and proposed list of regional capital projects. So to begin, just to reflect on the overall calendar, we're entering the home stretch of the development of the plan. We are currently working to wrap up the strategies identification and development process. We'll be coming back to this committee in March to share a summary of that. We've also began outlining the plan, so we're already getting into that drafting phase of the work. And we'll also be working to finalize RCPs and then move on to conduct the air quality conformity analysis of them. But so before we dive into the financial plan and the RCPs, I want to just take a moment to do some context setting. Apologies to anyone who tuned into TC. This is going to be kind of repetitive to that. But over the past year, I've talked a lot about how much of regional transportation planning process is driven by federal regulations. From the need to update the plan every 4 years, to the identification of regional capital projects, and the prioritization to ensure the plan is fiscally constrained. There are numerous requirements that we must meet throughout the planning process, and it's important that we meet those requirements. But federal regulations don't exactly make for a compelling story of why we do this. So I want to take a few moments to tell what I think is a more compelling story of why we go through this process. It is a story rooted in tension. In a region as big and as ambitious as ours, tension comes with the territory, whether it's, competing priorities from communities, different modes, different scales of government, and different, oftentimes competing challenges and pressures. So this is something we're all familiar with. It's a specific type of tension, and it's something I know feels very familiar to all of you. And that's the idea that we never have enough money to do all the things we want to do. It's a tension that is at the core of the topic we're focusing on today, with the updates on the financial constraint and the proposed list of regional capital projects, constrained regional capital projects. And that brings us to the guiding principle of prioritized investment. So as you all probably recall, prioritized investment is one of the guiding principles of ON2 2050 and is based on a straightforward idea that with limited transportation dollars, we must invest in the strategies and projects that deliver the greatest benefits for people and communities across the region. That means being honest about financial realities, making trade-offs in a transparent way, and grounding decisions in data and performance. This is especially important in a region like ours, where we have a legacy system, a big backlog of repair needs, and during a time with rapidly increasing costs. Every dollar must work harder today than it did yesterday. The regional transportation planning process is how we put this principle of prioritized investment into practice. As we've already discussed, the planning process is mostly established in federal regulations. So I'd like to take a moment to reflect on the history of how those regulations came to be. And so to do this, we'll need to go back to the 1950s. So it's a story I think most of us are familiar with. Following World War II, the United States invested heavily in highways and auto-oriented development. The suburbs grew rapidly, homeownership expanded, and the car became the default way of moving through daily life. For most households, this felt like opportunity. The system was opening up, new places to live, new jobs, and new forms of mobility. There was a sense of optimism about what infrastructure could do for economic development and our quality of life. If we stop the story here, it would be a very straightforward, build it and they will thrive narrative. But of course, we know the story is a bit more complicated than that. As the highway network expanded, tensions began to grow. So many of those same projects that created new opportunities also created some real harms. Highway expansions cut through neighborhoods, often through communities of color and lower income areas that had less political power. People experienced displacement and a loss of small business corridors and physical barriers between neighborhoods. At the same time, air pollution, traffic noise, and congestion became more visible throughout most regions. Communities and local leaders started to organize and push back on proposed routes and demand a greater voice in how decisions are made. So we ended up with a real tension. Regions needed mobility and economic growth, but the way decisions were being made were critiqued as being too top-down, too driven by the feds and by the state, and were really disconnected from the local needs and context. That tension is what ultimately pushed Congress to create a different kind of regional decision-making structure for transportation. That structure is the Metropolitan Planning Organization, or the MPO. So in 1962, Congress passed the Federal Aid Highway Act, which required metropolitan transportation planning as a condition of federal funding in metropolitan areas. That is where the Metropolitan Planning Organization comes in. It is a regional forum where state DOTs, transit agencies, local governments, and others come together to make decisions about how we invest in the regional transportation system. NPOs are required to use the 3C process. That's a continuing, comprehensive, and cooperative process. Planning has to be continuing. It's meant to be a space for a continuous dialogue, not something that just sits on a shelf and collects dust. So this is why we're updating this plan every 4 years. It's meant to be a continuous space for us to have conversations like we are today. It has to be comprehensive, so it covers multiple contexts, multiple modes, and multiple impacts. And it has to be cooperative, so that no single agency makes decisions in isolation. So I think the next slide is one that is familiar, I think, to most of you. The core responsibilities of an MPO include managing the Metropolitan Transportation Planning process, or the development of the RTP, developing a long-range regional transportation plan that identifies regional priorities, maintaining a short-range transportation improvement program and a unified work plan, as we've already talked about today, allocating certain federal transportation funds, like this is the STP, CMAQ, TAP, and maintaining travel modes and data resources. Maintaining travel models and data resources, conducting an inclusive public participation process. So in Northeastern Illinois, as you all know, this function rests within CMAP. But so if we're on the next slide, and if we go, I think there's an animation here. There we go. Some states, including Illinois, decided that transportation planning and broader regional planning were too interconnected to be in separate silos. The state created CMAP by merging the MPO function with the regional land use and economic planning responsibilities. Today, MPOs like CMAP help to facilitate regional coordination, ensure compliance with state and federal regulations, conduct performance-based planning and programming, and provide a space for collaborative decision-making where we can consider trade-offs together. And that brings us today's updates on the development of the financial plan, fiscal constraint, and the proposed list of regional capital projects. So as a quick reminder, the financial plan is a required element of the federal metropolitan planning process. Federal regulations require that the plan demonstrate that sufficient funding is reasonably expected to be available to support the investments that are identified in the plan. When we presented in October at the joint MPO and board meeting, we shared an early draft of the financial plan that showed projected investment needs that far exceeded expected revenues. At that stage, the draft reflected the full set of regional capital projects that had been submitted, along with placeholder numbers for cost areas that were still being refined. Sharing the initial constraint helped to establish a shared understanding of the region's investment needs and provided a foundation for subsequent discussions that we've had with you and your teams. Those discussions have helped clarify priorities and informed how to refine the financial plan in the proposed list of constrained projects in a way that allows for our region's ambition and yet remains fiscally grounded and achievable. So on this slide, you'll see this chart shows how, as a result of those conversations, we've revised the draft constraint, which is now balanced at approximately $570 billion for both revenues and expenditures over the plan period. Compared to the previous forecast, this fiscal constraint reflects only the constrained list of regional capital projects that has been proposed and is attached in the agenda packet today. On the revenue side, the new fiscal constraint also incorporates changes codified in NEDA that provided new operating and capital revenues for transit. Staff have incorporated the authorized increase to the RTA sales tax, have updated the methodology for forecasting sales tax on motor fuel, and have added a placeholder estimate for annual interest from balances in the road fund and the state construction account. So despite the changes that were made and everyone's project prioritization efforts, the fiscal constraint shows that baseline revenues are still insufficient to operate, maintain, and improve the existing system, let alone enhance the system or meet regional goals and mandates to add capacity, including those that were initially included on the full list of RCPs. It's only with the inclusion of our reasonably expected revenues that those additional expenditures will be possible. So on the next slide, as we've previously shared, the financial plan currently includes 5 different categories of reasonably expected revenues. These are revenues that are not in place today, but that we can reasonably assume can be implemented during the planning period and have risen to the top as important tools to put the region on a path to a fully funded transportation system. So we've talked about many of these before, but with sales tax modernization or expanding the sales tax base to include consumer services is a cornerstone recommendation that will provide long-term sustainable funding for the transit system. A new regional revenue source, such as motor vehicle registration surcharge or a rideshare tax, can help the region become less reliant on the state or federal government for a resource in the future. A freight delivery fee can capture the impacts that shifting economic behaviors and growing e-commerce have on our roadways. Also, adding tolling where reconstructions occur in our region is an important tool for reducing large price tags associated with these projects and for expanding our congestion management efforts. And lastly, transitioning from the motor fuel tax to a road usage charge will be an important step for ensuring roadway user fees continue to provide the largest slice of transportation funding pie. So to add to the previously shared policy development efforts to support these revenue recommendations, CMAP just published the Advancing a Road Usage Charge, or RUC, in Illinois white paper. Shown on the right of this slide and shared in the RTP memo included the MPO that was included in the MPO agenda today. The white paper lays out how transportation funding challenges are at play, wherein the MFT, despite currently being a vital tool for funding a range of transportation projects, will lose sustainability over time as vehicles become increasingly more efficient. The next step for designing and piloting a RUC in Illinois, which is a RUC feasibility study, and the key policy areas where the region and the state can innovate and contribute to the larger conversation around mileage-based user fees. Ultimately, the goal of all of this work is to support the realization of the much-needed resources between now and 2050 to make all the projects that have been identified a reality. So in parallel with balancing the fiscal constraint, CMAP has also been conducting a risk assessment of the financial plan. Given the uncertainties that come with planning for a 20-plus year horizon, both revenue and expenditure forecasts are subject to a wide range of economic, policy, and implementation uncertainties. The risk assessment is a structured way to identify and examine those uncertainties and understand how they could impact the region's ability to fund and deliver projects that are included in the plan. The work serves several important purposes. First, it increases transparency around strengths and limitations of the long-range financial planning assumptions that were made and the challenges the region may face over time. Second, it supports better decision-making by highlighting the conditions under which fiscal constraint could come under pressure. And finally, it helps inform a more flexible and resilient plan by identifying strategies that we can implement to reduce our exposure to most likely risks and limit their potential impacts. Ultimately, the goal is not to predict the future perfectly, but to make sure that we are clear-eyed about uncertainty and better positioned to adapt as conditions change. So with a clear understanding of fiscal constraint, let's now turn to the proposed list of constrained projects, which was also included in today's agenda packet. First, let's take a moment to reflect on how we got to this point. We began with identifying candidate projects to be considered, and then evaluating them over the summer. That was really a first step. We took that information and began to have one-on-one meetings with our implementing partners to share the results and then to better understand their priorities and the readiness of the projects that they submitted. Based off of those evaluation results and those conversations with implementing agencies, CMAP drafted the proposed list of constrained projects and distributed that to the RCP resource group before we presented on it at the Transportation Committee meeting earlier in December. Additionally, CMAP has been scheduling one-on-one meetings with the leadership of our implementing partners. Many of you in this room have been in those meetings. This is meant just to confirm the priorities that we landed on with staff. And we've gotten through about I think about a third of the way through our partner list of partners. So if we haven't already met with you, we will be reaching out over the next month or two to do so. So during this time, so as we do this, our goal is to work towards getting to the March MPO meeting. That's when we're going to come back to you all and share where we landed through all those conversations, provide an overview of the projects that are on that constrained list. And the main kind of critical path here is that we need to have that list in a finalized state so we can do our air quality conformity analysis that has to begin in late March. And so for the rest of the timeline, After that, we'll do the conformity, and then we'll need to have conformity complete before we release the draft plan for public review and comment in June. And then we'll come back in the fall of this year to board and MPO to request consideration for the plan to be adopted. So our prioritization framework organizes the project portfolio into two main buckets. This is hopefully familiar, but worth revisiting. First, there is the unconstrained list. Those are the conceptual projects that need more study, an illustrative list of projects that could move forward if we have additional funding available. Projects on the unconstrained list are not eligible for federal funds or for federal approvals. So that's kind of the red side of the graphic. Second, we have the constrained list of projects. These are divided into near-term projects in the first 10 years and long-term projects in 11 plus years, which really only matters for financial plan purposes. This is not something that those projects aren't required to move during those windows of time. There's still flexibility there, but we also identify priority projects and programs. These are the investments that perform well across multiple evaluation criteria and provide significant regional benefits. They're not the only projects we care about. There are many others that are included in the proposed list of RCPs, but these are the ones that through the evaluation process provide significant benefits, and we want to be able to have an opportunity to highlight those specifically in their importance to advancing regional goals. I also want to reiterate that we do update the plan every 4 years. So as I mentioned before, the transportation planning process is meant to be a continuous process or a continual dialogue of what the region's transportation priorities are. But we also know that conditions on the ground do not stand still in between those 4 years. So we have an amendment process that allows the plan to remain current and credible when significant funding or project changes occur between updates. The current amendment process is primarily structured to address the addition of new projects to the regional capital projects list. Through the RCP resource group, we heard feedback that the existing procedures do not clearly define how projects already included in the plan are treated when their cost, scope, or assumptions change substantially after the plan is after plan adoption. Concerns were raised about the potential for inconsistent implementation across projects and sponsors, unclear expectations for sponsors and partner agencies, limited transparency and coordination with committees and the public as changes occur, or there being few structured opportunities to revisit or adjust projects once they are included in the plan, which is especially important given the changes made to the capacity thresholds to meet our air quality conformity responsibilities, which has resulted in slightly more smaller dollar projects included on the list. In response to this feedback, CMAP staff are proposing updates to the amendment process to better reflect the range of changes that can occur over the life of the plan and to provide clear guidance and expectations. The intent is to continue meeting federal requirements while allowing appropriate flexibility for project sponsors and improving transparency around changes to investment priorities and the trade-offs that accompany them. Key updates include establishing multiple categories of amendments that correspond to different levels of change in project scope or cost, clarifying the associated processes and timelines, and introducing a variance policy to address limited time-sensitive situations where applying the standard procedures would create significant administrative, operational, or timing challenges. And so the more detailed overview of those proposed changes to the amendment process are linked in the agenda packet today. So coming back to the timeline, I want to make sure we reiterate that everything presented today is very much still in draft form. As I mentioned previously, we are continuing to have conversations with the RCP resource group to discuss priority projects, and CMAP is meeting with leadership of implementing agencies to discuss the proposed constrained list of projects and confirm that the priorities we have discussed and confirm their priorities that were discussed with the resource group members. The goal is to formalize the project list and come back to this committee in the CMAP board in March, as previously mentioned, and so that we can conduct air quality conformity and get the plan out for public review. So that concludes my presentation. Thank you all for your time, and I'm happy to take any questions.
All right, thank you so much. We appreciate all the structure and the detail underneath it. So that was a great report. Yes, question from Ms. Orban.
Thank you for the presentation, Ryan. I have a mechanical question, but I know you know the answer. I just forget what it is. So going back to the presentation, I know you said right now the list of regional RCPs is in draft form. And there was a slide where it talked about not eligible for federal funds and that if you're on the unconstrained list, but so you have to be on the constrained list to be eligible for federal funds. So for example, like to get design approval on a phase 1 study, right?
Correct.
So what does that mean in terms of, because I recall that in the definition of an RCP now, that includes add lanes. So for many of us at this table, we have projects in our program where we may be adding a lane for a portion of our system. So what has to be in terms of like the dollar amount, or like what would you need from us if we have a project that meets one of those thresholds and we don't see it?
So we would need the information that we requested for the initial call for RCPs.
But do you have to have all of the construction? Like if you haven't even done a phase 1 yet, do you need the whole construction dollar amount in there?
Oh, no, it's very high level. It's, high level scope, planning cost estimate for it.
Got it.
Project limits, things like that. Yeah, don't need phase 1 engineering type level of data. It's also worth noting that you can move forward with phase 1 without being an RCP. You just can't get the final phase 1 approval. That's what hangs.
Without doing an amendment or waiting for that 4 years to get added in.
Correct. And also it's worth mentioning or noting that like planning studies that occurred that are not phase 1, but earlier planning studies do not require going through this process at all. You can move forward with that without being on the constrained list.
Thank you.
Yeah.
Do we have other questions? Thank you for raising that. All right, thank you so much for the report. And we're moving on then to item 6.04, appropriately freight in Northeastern Illinois. Having certainly discussed the UP proposed merger earlier, it's timely. And we have Alex Beata and Tom Murtha who are going to present this update.
All right, thank you, Chair. Good morning, all. I'm Alex Beata. I serve as Director in the Regional Policy and Implementation Division here at CMAP, and I'm joined by Senior Planner Tom Murtha, also from the RPI Division. Just moving to the next slide. As Erin previewed in her remarks earlier in the meeting today, our goal here is to provide a very high-level overview of the freight system in the region, the idea being that we'd like to set the stage for future discussions with this committee about current freight policy topics. So today we'll provide a whirlwind tour for you, describing the extent and usage of the freight system in our region, but really focusing on the economic impacts of that activity to the region's businesses and workers. And then we'll close with a reminder for those around the committee of the depth and breadth of freight planning activity that we do at CMAP. So moving to the next slide, here we're very fond of saying that Northeastern Illinois serves as the freight hub of North America. And that is true across many modes of transportation. We're home to a vast highway network of more than 30,000 miles of interstate and arterial roadways. And many of those expressways are coast to coast or significant Midwestern facilities. We're home to a vast freight rail network, nearly 4,000 miles of rail lines, nearly 20 intermodal yards across the region. We are the historic meeting point of the Eastern and Western railroads, which generates quite a high volume of activity. So road and rail maybe capture a lot of the attention, but we're home as well to 3 ports, providing access to both the Great Lakes and Mississippi River Basin systems. For those who are keen history buffs, that's really part of the region Chicago was initially settled in the early 19th century, was that unique access between those 2 major water systems. We're home to two major airports, O'Hare, of course, being prime of the two, but also Midway, which are home to a significant volume of air cargo activity. Behind the scenes, we have pipelines that crisscross the region, moving bulk goods, particularly refined petroleum products. And on the land use side, there are more than 1 billion square feet of industrial uses across the region, which is a critical support asset to not only move these goods, but also store them in warehouses and move them to fulfillment facilities and so forth. So while the first slide focused on the what, so to speak, this next slide goes into the how much. So on the left, you see, I'm sure there's some squinting involved, but geographic representation of that multimodal network. And that supports this high volume of activity. So we're looking at over $1 trillion worth of goods moving through the region each year, more than 700 million tons of those goods. On some components of our expressway system, we see over 40,000 trucks per day. I believe it's nearly 50,000 on the Borman approaching the Indiana state line. On the rail side, we're fond of, again, citing some of these very impressive statistics. 1 in 3 rail cars of the nation pass through Northeast Illinois. I believe it's about half of intermodal activity touches the Chicago region at some point. On the water side, over 15,000 barges per year pass through Dresden Island, which is on the Illinois River. It's a lock and dam in the far southwesternmost portion of our region. That essentially serves as the gateway between the Chicago area and the Mississippi River Basin system downstate. And over 80 freighters, air cargo liners are processed each day at O'Hare. Moving to the next slide, looking at some of this volume over time. In the long term, this is a story of growth. So since the year 2000, we've seen nearly a 30% increase in intermodal lift activity. And that describes the movement between modes of freight transportation for those intermodal boxes that you often see on freight railroads and trucking. So it's a tremendous growth there. More recently, in the past few years, about a 35 to $40 billion growth in value of freight flows. And looking to the future, some of the technical underpinnings of our regional freight model project nearly a 40% increase in truck VMT through the year 2050. So we've seen tremendous growth over the past 20 to 25 years. More recently, we've seen, I would characterize some stability. We've seen ups and downs with some of the macroeconomic changes due to COVID, inflation, trade policy. So some more stable volumes recently, but growth over time experienced, and we anticipate growth moving forward. So a quick whirlwind there of the magnitude of freight activity by the numbers. I'll pass the baton over to Tom to focus on the economic impact of that activity.
Thanks, Alex. So again, what we want to talk briefly about the freight system relationship to the economy. We're looking at more general network items, network analyses, and subsequent work, but the reports that we've been working on so far really focusing on economics. Important part of the economic activity is the employment for the region. In the core rail, truck, water sections of the freight industry, more than 124,000 jobs at 13,000 establishments. It's mostly concentrated in trucking, but substantial volumes also in rail and marine. The idea here being that those are very efficient industries. We can move a lot of goods with very few people and at very low cost. So again, a lot of people are employed in the region in these core industries. If we look at the broader industries, next slide, please. There are about 86,000 additional jobs at 1,900 establishments that are sort of freight in the broader freight cluster. And this includes things like freight arrangement, big industry, highly concentrated in the Chicago metropolitan area. And again, a lot of just supportive industries that make a lot of good jobs for the region. What we call the location quotient, the relative proportion of jobs in the freight cluster relative to the rest of the country is 1.27, but that actually belies some real strengths in the region. So we in some industries, so example for the freight arrangement, it might be substantially higher in the 2.6 range, if I recall. Looking over again, the jobs that are not only in the freight industry or supporting the freight industry, but actually support the region's economy, notably manufacturing. We see that about a quarter of the region's jobs are supported by the freight industry, require that the goods come into and out of the region at an economical price. Most of the trade that our region has is with local, or I shouldn't say local, but nearby metropolitan areas. So areas within the Midwest typically served by trucking. But then when we also think about the long range rail system and so forth, we will then be more served by items such as rail, Los Angeles, New York, Dallas, and so forth. So many trading partners, important economic relationships between our industries and the industries around the country. And then, so finally, the last thing that I want to talk about is what this means for our economy. Pardon me. This is kind of a chart, a table showing relationship between the goods that are moved and the values by import and export. When we look at the relationship of inbound, outbound tonnages, many more tons are brought into the region than are exported from the region. And this might be everything from food to the inputs for manufacturers and so forth. But when we look at the outbound dollar value, what this freight system means for our economy, we see that the value outbound is $100 billion more than the value inbound. So again, importance for our region is that value add that we add for the goods in the region, and why we're interested in freight transportation for the Chicago metropolitan area.
Thank you. So as the last several slides have shown, freight is of great importance to Northeastern Illinois, and CMAP has long recognized that. We've done policy and planning work for many years. We're currently developing a regional freight system assessment, and we've published those sorts of reports. A few others are shown in thumbnails on the right. We provided a variety of technical assistance offerings to local public agencies, including truck routing studies, for example. We worked with the Illinois International Port District on their master plan a few years back. We've done grade crossing studies as well. We provide data and resources, many of which are bespoke. The intermodal lift data set that I referred to in passing is the only one that I know of publicly available. It's cited frequently by planning partners. We work with our research and analysis team to develop unique analytical tools, such as a freight model that supports scenario planning and so forth. And we're always keen to include freight investment priorities in our advocacy products, including our federal and state legislative agendas, the Northeastern Illinois Priority Projects booklet, federal reauthorization principles. So we try very hard to keep freight top of mind in the work we do here at the agency. And just a quick plug for the QR code that would lead you to the Regional Freight System Assessment project page as our sort of marquee ongoing planning activity for freight. So with that, we're happy to take any questions from committee members, and thank you very much for your time.
Other questions? Or comment?
Yeah, thank you,
You-
Madam Chair. Just thank you, Alex and Tom, for the presentation from the Class 1s. We certainly appreciate the CMAP's focus and attention to the freight industry. From our perspective, from the Class 1's perspective, we invest hundreds of millions of dollars into our networks every year in the state of Illinois. UP about 100 million alone. And so when we think about that investment, we certainly want to recognize our public partners, the county, the city, IDOT, for your continued partnership and strengthening our freight network here in the region through CREATE and other things. So thank you for that. And just, selfishly from UP's perspective, we believe that the UP-NS merger will strengthen Chicago's role as the nation's freight hub by making the terminal more efficient for both passenger and freight. So again, just thank you for highlighting this. Appreciate it.
Great, thank you for those comments. Any other questions or comments? All right, very timely. Thank you so much for all the work, and I hope everyone gets a chance to read the reports.
Thank you.
Okay. On to item 6.05, legislative update. Cassia Hart.
Good morning, everyone. Kasha Hart, principal with our Intergovernmental Affairs team. Just a brief update today. I'll start at the federal side. So following the reopening of the federal government, conversations about FY26 appropriations have restarted, with the current continuing resolution set to expire January 30th, which will be here before we know it. The THUT bill is one of the 9 outstanding FY26 appropriations bills, and presently there is a fair amount of daylight between the existing House and Senate THUT proposals, so a lot to do between now and the end of January on appropriations. On reauthorization, committees are said to be making rapid progress drafting base text, and language is currently expected to be available sometime in the next couple of months. Leadership on House TNI and Senate EPW have signaled priorities around consolidation of select discretionary programs into formula funds, deferring more decision-making authority to states, and permitting reform and other innovations in project delivery. So we're closely monitoring these discussions and engaging with our delegation staff on as more information about this language comes to light. As you know, we've worked with many of you all and your staff to develop some regional principles for reauthorization, which we've shared with our delegation. So more to come on that, I'm assuming by the time we convene again. On the state side, just want to build on what Aaron shared. So on December 16th, SB 2111 was signed into law. It's the comprehensive funding and reform package that allocates about $1.5 billion investment in transit. I know you all are intimately familiar with the details of this bill, so I won't go into too much more on that. But as Aaron noted, this is really a tremendous milestone in the process, but there is still a lot of work ahead to transition to a new agency and to stand that agency up and ensure that it's best positioned to yield the system improvements that were envisioned in the bill and envisioned in the part report. And we're still evaluating how we can be a supportive partner in that process, but look forward to working with many of you on that. And just are grateful that the part report could be an instructive roadmap for legislators, that they were able to secure transportation revenues for this transformational investment. I do just want to flag a couple of key dates that are ahead. So the bill does have an effective date of June 1st, so about 5 months from now. And then all new board appointments must be approved by their respective appointing authorities within 120 days of the act's passage. So that's about October 2026. More to come certainly as this bill goes into effect in a few months. So in terms of what's ahead for the General Assembly, the Senate gavels back in next week and then the House the following week. There isn't too much activity that's anticipated before the March 17th primaries, but never know necessarily. That concludes my legislative update. Happy to answer any questions.
All right. Thank you so much. Are there any questions? All right, there's a lot ahead. Okay, thank you so much. Item 7.0, other business. Is there any other business before the MPO Policy Committee? Oh,
Like none.
looks like none. And so now we'll take public comments from individuals who are in the audience first, followed by remote participants. Are there any comments from the public?
It's like no one in the room, but we do have Garland Armstrong online.
Okay. All right.
Happy New Year to you, Tia, Aaron, and everybody from the MPO. It's Garland Armstrong, formerly of Des Plaines and Elmwood Park, now living in Des Moines, Iowa. How's everybody doing in the Chicagoland area?
We are good, and Happy New Year to you and your family.
And don't forget my wife's birthday. She's still celebrating her New Year's birthday month, and she is the New Year's baby. And then January 29th will be our 22nd wedding anniversary.
Oh
So
my goodness.
that's right.
Congratulations
And
on
next
all.
month is my birthday too, February 23rd, where I'll be turning 60.
Oh my goodness. Well,
Yes.
congrats.
Yep. Well, I just wanted to give kudos to Scott Henning, who's going to become the vice chair for Transportation Committee meeting. Scott, me and Heather will be back in April, so we'll be seeing you. So it's good to give kudos to you. And we miss McHenry County like Crystal Lake. Every time when we go up there, it is so beautiful up there, like the rural farm community. So we love going up there in McHenry County. So me and Heather want to give kudos to you, Scott, because you are a rock star for McHenry County and from us. So way to go, Scott.
Thank you, Garland. I look forward to seeing you when you're back. Thank you.
All right. And also for Lynette, for Metra, Lynette, I'm just deeply concerned about especially when the freight comes through there during midday and even on weekends, that would affect those commuters who needs to get around, and there's going to be a lot of delays. So how are you going to be able to make sure that Metra will work it out so when all the commuters want to be on time instead of all this freight delays, because they're going to be really some thunderous loud noise and what's happening and why the long delays. So that will affect everybody at different stations, especially like on the UP, like in Elmhurst. And then people will not be able to get across if their inbound train or outbound train is approaching and which side of it, because they only have stairs. And then people with disabilities, that's a problem there in Elmhurst. How will they be able to know which side the train is going to be on if the freight train is stopped or not moving? And how will they be able to be well prepared for it? Because there's going to be a lot of thunderous noise over it in different stations and in different municipalities. So how y'all going to coordinate with that? Because they want to know well prepared in advance for it.
Thanks, Garland. You know what? We'll give you a call afterwards and we'll follow up with you.
Yeah, because we want to make sure that everybody from all walks of life, so they can be extremely well prepared once for the Union Pacific and the Norfolk. Because if Metra is also going to be going through that area and the freight train stopping and people and the community, what's next? Because they want to know well in advance, because they don't want anything happen at the last minute. Because I've had that scene when one time when me and my wife was living there, because the freight train, especially from stretching out from Elmwood Park, it stopped and no platform announcements and other things, but how to make sure that they are extremely well prepared for this one, because this is going to be a big test for it, because once the merger goes through, because they're going to be really outraged of it.
Yeah, thank you, Garland. We share that level of concern, and we'll be in a lot of conversations about it, and Metro will be sure to follow up with you specifically to make sure we have it all. So thank you. Thank you for raising those.
All right. And make sure to keep me posted on it. And when y'all get the draft, once we come back in April, we'll be right there by the Transportation Committee meeting. So it's going to be so emotional for me to come back since I lost my mother last year, but I'll be there for the memorial when we're back in the Chicagoland area. So we'll stop by over there at CMAP. So That's all I want you to know, and be well prepared. April 20th is the date when we're back in the Chicagoland area.
All right.
So,
We'll see
so
you
mark
then.
it on your calendar.
Thank you. Thank you.
All right.
All right.
And I think that's it for public comment today.
Okay. All right. Seeing no further comments from the public. Item 9.0, which is our next meeting. It's scheduled for March 12th, 2026. So that's all you need to know. Put it on your calendar. And then item 10 is adjournment. So I'll entertain a motion to adjourn. Thank you. Second? Second. All in favor, say aye. Aye. Opposed? Nope. We're done. Adjourned. Thank you, everyone.